The Monadnock region is filled with both breathtaking natural beauty and a community of people who personify that beauty. Community can also mean the sights, smells, and sounds that give us that feeling of home. I'm sure that you will agree after this evening that the sounds of Rodger's poetry and Lenny's music make us all feel right at home in the Monadnock region. Rodger Martin is the author of 5 books of poetry, including The Sleeping Dogs of Lubeck, The Nemo Poems, A Martian Perspective, The Battlefield Guide, the Blue Moon series, and For All the Tea in Zhangguo. All right, I'm sorry, thank you. He is the director of the Monadnock Pastoral Poets and recipient of the 2024 Stanley Kunitz Medal. In addition to his writing, Martin teaches journalism and creative writing at Keene State College and advises the Equinox, the college's award-winning student news organization. Martin's poems, Late Afternoon Solstice at Aldworth Manor, Harrisville, New Hampshire, and For Del Rossi's Homemade Pasta are featured as part of the Our Story exhibit. Singer-songwriter, guitarist, Lenny Solomon has handcrafted his music for over 40 years. Combining elements of folk, country, and blues, Solomon has released 4 albums of original material, including Not Life Threatening, Armando's Pie, Maybe Today, and Under My Hat, that combine all of those elements. Solomon has won a dozen songwriting awards. Solomon's songs Ode to Robert Frost and Cold New Hampshire Morning in the Snow are also featured as part of the Our Story exhibit. So without further ado, please welcome Rodger Martin and Lenny Solomon. Absolutely.
Thank you for coming. And if you have electronic devices, please make sure they're turned to buzz or silent or something like that. We will, this is in a way a call and response. In the program you see I'll do a poem, and then Lenny has a song that ties into things that tie into this region, okay? This first poem, which was part of the exhibit, Late Afternoon Solstice at Aldworth Manor, Harrisville, New Hampshire. If you know Harrisville and Aldworth Manor, it used to be the Antioch Graduate School. That was a church for a while. It's a wonderful Italianate villa that was actually moved up from Worcester, Massachusetts, so that the descendant woman could live in the house. The will said she could have the house for nothing as long as she lived in it, and she wanted to move to Harrisville, so she had the house moved. And it's worth, I think they have public nights on Wednesdays. They're open to the public for dinner. So this is a poem about an event there. Sunlight slants onto silver-backed Monadnock, a capstone evening for the peak to survey its woods and waters trooping into distance. It is a lonely voyage into this wildness. A half-century ago, I crouched like a supplicant, stared at a map, placed a compass point centered on this summit, which called me from myself, drew a 30-mile radius and determined, like Odysseus, no other title called home. I was adopted. This evening, my contingent scatters, acquiring their needs. I too shall adopt.
Hi, I want to say hi to everybody and welcome and thanks for coming. This is a song that I wrote after rereading some of Robert Frost's poetry a number of years ago. Whose words are these? I just don't know. Don't even have a clue. Question isn't high on my list. So many times I've walked this path, no need to find out who. It won't change the way I feel or what I do. My little horse don't give a damn who owns this rut we've crossed. Wish I could write a poem as good as Robert Frost. I see a road before me, diverging in the mist. Which one should I take today? One goes straight for miles, one has a sudden twist. Will I end up wondering what I might have missed? Will I end up lucky, or will I end up lost? Wish I could write a poem as good as Robert Frost. Fire or ice, I hardly ever think of these things twice. When my thoughts go swirling, the simple things get tossed. Wish I could write a poem as good as Robert Frost. I wish I had a little bird and never fly away. On my shoulder it would always be. She'd sing for her supper, she'd sing to celebrate the day. I'd close my eyes, she'd never ever stray. And she'd whisper words of wisdom that she'd share with me at no cost. Wish I could write a poem as good as Robert Frost. Wish I could write a poem as well as Robert Frost.
This next poem is titled For Del Rossi's Homemade Pasta. If you think about, is there a food theme going here with the first two poems? I believe food is more than just a necessity for the body. I think good food is important for the soul. So often I actually have a lot of poems about food when something special happens. And this was about an incident that sparked that. If you don't know where Del Rossi's Trattoria is, it's in Dublin, New Hampshire, off the beaten way. And if you love Italian food, it's well worth a visit. They have the best homemade pasta I've ever tasted anywhere in the world. For Del Rossi's homemade pasta, March 31st, 2008. The Trattoria, a crossword of the nose, intersection of the taste, mirror where tongue and ear meet eye, and plates serve song, and song sings pasta. Kitchen stage three-part syncopated feast, and singers salad up Big Daddy-O, eat at the bar, while musicians swizzle picks over strings with dessert for a star. And in the blue room, an aristocratic carafe of Nebbiolo Barolo softens light and mysteries between lovers' words. A brush, like a double-pawed cat, curling among the tables, nuzzling, kneading our muzzles to a satisfied purr. Your turn.
Let's see, before I tell you about this song, first I want to introduce Dave Beauchamp, who's playing on guitar. We've been playing together for about a year and a half, and Dave keeps me honest. And I also want to point out that my wife Susan, who's somewhere here, has a wonderful painting up on the wall over there by herself, the singleton up there. But unfortunately, I have to disagree with Rodger, because my favorite Italian place is called Armando's Pizza. And Armando's is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I lived for a long time. And the fellow who owned it, Armando, was an amazing fellow. He unfortunately has passed away at this point, but he was. I wrote this song, and I named one of my albums after him, and then I didn't tell him until it was all packaged, and I walked into his pizza place, and I said, "Here you go, Armando." Anyway, it's called Armando's Pie. That's a false start, it's called, because I forgot what chords, and it comes back. Here we go. Across the sea from Italy, came to raise a family. Worked real hard for something more. Opened up a pizza store. One bite of an Armando pie make you feel it's the very first time. Everyone would get so high if they had an Armando pie. If you've got one wish before you die, make it this and I'll tell you why. It's heaven on earth, so just say hi and order up an Armando pie. His wife and children all work there, serving pies to make you swear. You can look both far and wide, find nothing like an Armando pie. One bite of an Armando pie make you feel it's the very first time. Everyone would be so high if they had an Armando pie. If you've got one wish before you die, make it this and I'll tell you why. It's just say hi and order up an Armando pie. He waits till you say go, then he flings the dough high up into the air. Then it lands right on the pan. Saturday, you got no date. Don't feel low, don't hesitate. Just one taste will make it right. Make you smile all through the night. One bite of an Armando pie, make you feel like the very first time. Everyone will be so high when they had an Armando pie. If you've got one wish before you die, make it this and I'll tell you why. It's heaven on earth, so just say hi and order up an Armando pie. Order up an Armando pie.
Now we'll move to a more local connection, actually here in Keene, New Hampshire. I grew up in southern Pennsylvania, not far from Gettysburg. And so as a boy, I was enamored with the Civil War. And we used to actually camp on the battlefield before things changed and no one was allowed to touch anything. And they just ignored us. And we walked every inch of that entire battlefield. And one of the things we learned was the individual stories. Everybody hears, you know, the Pickett Charge, the Lee, the Meade, the big Lincoln's address. But you get to see the individual human beings who had to live or not live through that event. And I found that fascinating. One of the first things I saw in a museum as a boy is I walked in, and there under thick museum glass was a target rifle with a scope, a telescopic scope. And I was stunned. I thought, wait a minute. This looks like it was made in 1945, not 1865. I thought, when did they have this kind of machinery in the Civil War? Well, they had a lot of it, but I just didn't realize that. So I never forgot that image. Then I grew up and ended up enlisting in the U.S. Army, and I saw war from a different perspective, more from the individual point of view, which changed a lot of how I saw things. And I didn't do much until about mid-'70s, early '80s. I started to think, did I really see what I thought I saw as a kid at Gettysburg? And so I drove back, and there was a place called the Lost Avenue, which you would only know if you were camping and in the woods and discover it. Couldn't find it. Wasn't there. It was just trees. But I thought, I don't believe I made that up. And I went to a ranger, and he says, oh, no, you mean the Lost Avenue? Well, when I was a kid, they were bushes. When I went back 20 years or 30 years, they were big trees. So they were there. You just couldn't see them. And that got me thinking about change. And I went back to that same rifle in the exhibit and discovered it was made in Keene, New Hampshire, right down the street off Central Square by a man named George Leonard. Okay, he was a gunsmith who made target rifles. That was sort of I don't know if it was maybe the trigger that unleashed this whole book. I started to write about what's today and then. But it meant nothing. I'm sure I saw Keene, New Hampshire as a young boy from Penn, but it meant nothing to me. But here I am living, and there it was. George Leonard made it, and someone had carved initials. The owner of the ride carved their initials. I thought it was A.C.H. The minute I saw that, I realized I can find out who that was, because I knew it was a Confederate soldier. It was in their area. I knew what regiments had been there. So I started going through rosters looking for an A.C.H. Texas rosters and Georgia regimental rosters to try and find an A.C.H. Nowhere was there an A.C.H. But there was an Absalom Hart, H-A-R-T, from Georgia. And I thought, well, I don't know who it was, but I can't resist playing with the name Absalom Hart. And so this poem came about. There's some names in it that are real. General Weed was a Union soldier killed, likely by one of these rifles. Captain Hazlitt, another, killed by that. I think the rest is pretty clear. Before this war, a craftsman named George Leonard of Keene, New Hampshire, exquisitely milled a target rifle. Somehow, it became a part of the unexpected clearance, the fire sale, demanding men like Amos Fortune be free. Leonard's gift worked its way to Georgia, and the initials A.C.H. Such a Georgian would know his craft like the writer knows ink, like the flautist knows wind, a song for any occasion, for turkey or venison or mink. Absalom Hart never crossed the Georgia line, but perhaps he had a son, Absalom Christian Hart, who needed life beyond Cobb County, Georgia, and found Penn's Woods good country to go about his father's business. A bullet to the gut dropped General Weed from his horse, and when Weed tried to whisper, Captain Hazlitt bent to listen. A bullet to Hazlitt's brain, a second, a quitclaim to mystify the parliamentarian. How unseemly for a gentleman to splatter gray matter on another without opportunity for apology. A new founder's creed, annihilation without representation. Had there been corporations, such efficiency would have pleased Generals Electric and Motors, and Microsoft would cherish the simplicity. On or off, 1 or 0. Later, somewhere in the devil's den, a concussion sought out the name behind the initials, Absalom Christian Hart, old friend, and separated his life from his rifles. 137 years later, we haphazardly travel from Keene, New Hampshire, look through thick glass at a rifle with patient, hand-carved initials, 1 or 0, on or off. And there's a postscript to that, because they have the book, and they decided, they took the rifle out and had a look at it. And because of the glass, I had misread the initials. They were A.C.P., not H. And sure enough, they traced back to a Texas regiment a man named Adam Clayton Powell, who was wounded on July 2nd, 1863. And they brought his descendants up to the park and then let them hold the rifle. It's still there. But I always like to think my mistake was good enough to make them curious enough. You could not tell with that thick glass. So I like the postscript to that. So Lenny,
Thank you. It's a great story. Well, this next song is called Gettysburg. I remember doing research. I think in that battle there were, I think it was 50,000 casualties. And I'll just sing the song. Swords were drawn from their scabbards on that hot, fateful day in July, when the young should be laughing and swinging instead of just fixing to die. Thunder rocked from the hillside, fireballs burst out their call, and the bullets, they came out of nowhere, and the screaming of death's cannonball in Gettysburg. In Gettysburg, Caleb was crouched in his hovel, hoping that its walls would protect from the pain and the hunger and the misery, and from the devil who was out to collect. When the doors of the shack were blown open by a wind that was shrouded in black, he cringed as it whistled right through him. He knew he was not coming back to Gettysburg. To Gettysburg. Now you can't hear a sound in Gettysburg. The streets are long, silent, and cold, and the truth of those days are now buried in graves with stories that'll never be told. Hills are aflame with this horror, brother against brother on the land, that their daddy had worked for the both of them. Now they draw a line in the sand, and the ghosts of the past are just speechless as the blood rains down from the sky, and it covers the birch trees and the beaches, and the cries of the young for they die. In Gettysburg. In Gettysburg. In Gettysburg.
And Lenny's song leads us on that same track. We're going to move forward, of course, to another war, which for all the young men and women now, some say if you're lucky enough to come home, I don't think luck is part of it, and I don't think it's fortunate enough. It's just, as I say that, 1 or 0, it's a mathematical thing more than luck now. So this is about a soldier named Nemo and his return home, perhaps just before he went to Aldworth Manor and found the Monadnock region. It's called Nemo's Return. The road, a black serpent striped white, scales the desert coast inward, and he, boat-sick centurion, lurches ashore to drive this reptilian hump toward its den. Telephone poles like intrusive pikes flash past his window, a line of crucifixions that carry the coarse voice inland. Home is full of strangers. Daughter grown weary, hot for the city, wife shackled by childhood, a barbed wire ring of domesticity, lover retreated into the cosmic hole of security. If only this snake coiled into a green, an oasis where all the world's flowers gather in hush, he'd solo differently, not so rampant like the nib whose ink has dried, leaving only coarse scratching on bark. The snake strikes left. He stands on the brake, skids this sliding rush to a halt at the edge of a ledge, and is slammed back into the seat. In the peace that follows, he calibrates his choices. All leave him sole proprietor of an empty estate. Learning's executor stranded on the vacant dust of the shoulder, a lane leading nowhere. The radiator boils over, the battery shorts, the gasoline line locks. She. Where does one lie for a woman? Oh, he could kick the tire, shove his fist deep into the fender. All has been tried. Instead, he squints at this dry landscape, squats until his bony haunches ache, and he finger paints in the sand.
A few years ago, there was a lot of publicity about soldiers coming back. In this case, it was from the war in Iraq. And what that experience did to their spirit and their souls, and how many of them, once they got home, took their own lives. And this is a song about that. It's called Soldier Coming Home. His grandpa hit the beach on D-Day. His father fought in Vietnam. That's the torch he carried in his hand. Would it help him make him stand, fighting in some foreign land? He trained in Virginia till he shipped out, a soldier full of battle cries. And in Fallujah he took his place until war's embrace shot him in the face. Soldier coming home from the war, his body torn to shreds, and the leaders just refused to see how their policies made the reality of his life. He flew home aboard a cargo plane, along with soldiers who had died. A few weeks passed, they slapped him on his back, said he was right on track. Then they said, that's that. Nothing he could do seemed to ease the pain that came to him most every night. He cried and he shouted and he slammed down his fists, and in one cruel twist he slashed both his wrists. Soldier coming home from the war, his body and his spirits torn to shreds, and the leaders just refused to see how their policies made the reality of his life. If you see a soldier from the war slumped in some alley, please understand, it don't matter if you think left or right. You gotta try with all your might to see that we never fight again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. I know we've been taking on a bit of an emotional roller coaster with some of these, but that's part of what connectivity in home and place is. It's not all one wonderful things. This next poem, I'm going to read, and then Lenny's going to do a companion song to it. We're going to pause for a bit because this is a roller coaster of a different kind. It is another local connection. There are a lot of stories that go with it, but I'm just going to skip those. If you want to ask about them, we'll talk about them at the Q&A part after we've done both songs. I think these pieces, they need to be tied together. But what I will say is, if you don't know the history of Monadnock, when I came to New England from stationed at Fort Devon, I drove up on a February night at about 3 in the morning, exhausted, pulled off the Freeway 84 and parked in a parking lot and went to sleep in Charlton, Mass. What I didn't know was it was an overlook. And when I woke up that morning, the entire central Massachusetts Valley was open, and there was Monadnock, snow-capped, tree-lined. I was stunned that there was anything like this on the East Coast. Never seen it. You know, you go to the Rockies or something, but there it was. And I thought, at that moment, I knew I was going nowhere else. But so that mountain holds a lot for me. The bare top, of course, comes from the fact that twice its top was burned. Once, maybe twice by accident. There is a legend that says wolves used to nest up there, so the sheep farmers set fire to the roof of the mountain to burn the wolves out. Sometimes that's called apocryphal. Sometimes I think it's just lightning strikes would set fire. And all that burned off, and because it's so popular, it's the second most climbed mountain in the world. The growth can't come back because we tramp it down as we're climbing around. So for me, that was kind of a benefit. So there's a little reference to that. And it is based on a true event, which we can talk about later if you'd like. But we'll move right from this into the Moose in Brooklyn. Okay? It's called Along the Monadnock Watch. Moonglow cast deep to the dark spine of rock and flank of this ancient whale of rock. And here, beached by the edge of a marsh stream, like a salt, like an almost Roman outpost, stands a well, guarding hemlock and brush, while mist unveils its tapestry. Soon, a giant form thrashes clear of water. A moose, rack erect, plods toward the well and pauses. Steam rises from his back. He slowly wheels, wattle winging like a bell, and sniffs toward the granite peak that once sheltered wolf, until these nearsighted, almost Latin tillers ring the stone with flame and burn the green to ash. The moose listens as those night legends sing, then ignores the granite blocks and returns to his slosh toward great lodges of pine. 2. Later, as the moon guards its lower track, the moose is nailed on Highway 12. 4 limbs shattered by the chrome of another dreamer. An officer kneels by his side, strokes the dark fur. The moose breathes deep. Each slow release, a soft cloud masked in the flash of red and blue, the low crackle of voice, square box of rescue truck. But there on the mountain, framed under stars, a gray wolf floats up the shoe-worn rock and turns to stare down at the tiny strobes gathered along the pencil line it cannot cross. It sifts its head, then crouches low and points its snout to heaven. The howl descends to the ears of the valley. The moose awakens. His clean, dark eyes meet the officers. Natives awaken and listen to owl echo wolf echo loon. The bull imagines his antlers rising from a cold lake while lilies cascade from his rack, and he bellows. The officer points his pistol and brings the hammer down.
Getting up was such a trial. Couldn't see, couldn't smile. His imagination in denial. He had no place to go. He had nothing left to show. For all his living days, but that was before he finally saw. Could not believe his eyes, a surreal surprise. On that misty day in Sheepshead Bay, he saw a moose in Brooklyn. He once thought that all was lost when emptiness became his boss, finding too late that the cost was too much for him to bear. And the edge of that despair almost whittled him away, but that was before he finally saw. Could not believe his eyes, a surreal surprise. On that misty day in Sheepshead Bay, he saw a moose in Brooklyn. He once thought the going rate for those like him who couldn't wait was to jump inside a leap of faith so he wouldn't have to think. And he'd sip that magic drink and pray that he'd be saved. But that was before he finally saw. Could not believe his eyes, a surreal surprise. On that misty day in Sheepshead Bay, saw a moose in Brooklyn. once thought that all this time was nothing more than a wasted rhyme, a poem scribbled line by line, waiting for an end. But there was nothing round the bend. Was his life in vain? But that was before he finally saw. Could not believe his eyes. A surreal surprise on that misty day. In Sheepshead Bay he saw a moose in Brooklyn. On that misty day in Sheepshead Bay he saw a moose in Brooklyn.
Thank you, Lenny. You can see why I like to think of that song as the spirit of the moose from Keene. We'll take a few minutes for questions, and then we'll do our closing piece, and I'd be happy to fill in the rest of that story about that poem, which is more of a local flavor. But are there questions for either one of us on anything that we've done so far? This exhibit. I knew of Lenny, but I didn't. I had never. I don't think we'd ever met before.
I don't know. I was, as I said before, my wife Susan Joyce Perry has a painting up there, and it was the opening show, and I was looking at all the paintings, and there was wine in the middle, which is always a good thing. And I was drinking some wine, and Rodger came up to me and said, "I really liked your song, the one about Robert Frost." And I said, "How the hell does Rodger know my song?" And so I asked him, "Did you go to an open mic or something?" And he said, "No, I saw it up there." And I had not noticed that my song was playing on the screen in back of me. I said, "Wow." And so that's how we met, and then we emailed, and we thought that this would be a really cool thing to do. So that's how it happened.
Yeah, it was another example of community and serendipity that worked at. Any other questions? Yes? Well, I know there's 3 of them in there at least.
Yeah.
Lenny?
Oh, geez. I have a problem answering questions about favorites. People ask me, what's the favorite song that you wrote, or what's your favorite group, and I would say the same thing about Robert Frost. He's written, the thing that impressed me about Robert Frost was that on one hand, his poems sounded so simple, and on the other hand, they were so complex.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say, I guess, about that. He has so many great poems.
You can ask me that question in class next time, and I'll recite 2 of the poems he used because I've got them memorized. Any other questions? I do want to talk about that. Yes?
It's a question for both of you. I know both of you have very different career paths before you got into what you did again. You were a soldier. You were in environmental science. Is that
Close, yeah.
How did you get into the music and go to the field that you're in now?
You want to go first?
I think I was always in the poetry field, even as a child. I wanted to be a baseball player, and I have astigmatism. I couldn't hit a curveball. So after that, what else do people say I do well? And they said, well, you're good with words. So I thought, okay, we'll go that route. So that was my love of words, goes way back. After the military service in Vietnam, then after I got out, I knew I wanted to teach. And part of that was because I sensed that one of the things I needed was regular breaks. Okay, that's just something I sensed I needed. And so I got into teaching, loved it, enjoyed it, been doing it ever since, and writing ever since. And I'll do a closing piece to a poet that sort of talks to that, Stanley Kunitz, who died when he was 101, and I love the work he did. He was twice United States Poet Laureate, and he kept getting better the older he got. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, it's not like baseball where at 30 or 35 you're done. I thought you can keep doing this for a long time. So he was my sort of mentor goal thing. I'm going to see if I can keep it up to 101. But so that's what I do. I like doing this, and Keen's been good. So that's how it is. Yes, I always stay around words. As long as it doesn't always have to be poetry, as long as it's language, I really enjoy that. I do want to talk about, though, the other story because it has a nice Keene and you may know this person. The police officer in that poem was Officer Madden. He was a police officer at the time, just maybe a rookie, or just new to the police force in Keene at that point. And he was the one who had to put the moose down. I had driven home that night, probably from teaching. It was late. I drove in my driveway in Harrisville, and there was a giant bull moose standing in the middle of my driveway looking at me, and it's like, wow, what do I do? Nothing. Just stop it. Because I wasn't going to argue, but it was just such a huge, magnificent creature. And I just watched and eventually turned around and walked off into the swamp. The next morning, I got up and read the Sentinel, and there was an article about a moose being killed on Route 12. And I really thought that maybe I had spooked the moose and that it had gone on. I really felt sort of responsible, really bothered me. So the poem came out of that. Years later, I found out that the moose on Highway 12 was not a bull moose. It was a cow, and it was on the other Highway 12 going towards Vermont. So it wasn't the same moose, which was good. But it's probably my most published poem, and I think just 2 years ago, I read in the paper that Officer Madden's now a sergeant, and he's retiring from the Keene Police. I thought, I have got to go over and meet him. So I went over and introduced myself and showed him the poem, and he told me it was one of the worst 3 or 4 weeks of his life because his wife couldn't go to the grocery store. He couldn't go out in public without people yelling at them for killing a moose, he did the right thing. But that's not how the community saw it. And so they went through that for a long time. So I felt really good about being able to do that. And then I sent that poem to China, and it got censored. The last 2 lines aren't in the poem in China. And I thought they forgot them, and I asked why. They said, oh no, police officers never carry weapons in China. So they weren't allowed to say that. Are there any other things we can do before we close? Go to it.
Oh. Well, firstly, I grew up in the 60s. In that little bio that was read early, it said I've been playing music for 40 years. I've been playing music actually for 60 years. I lied on that, make myself not as old as I am, but it's the way it goes. So I started playing music, after listening to all the wonderful music in the 60s, and I came up to Cambridge to go to graduate school, and I was also starting to write songs and playing guitar, and I got my first paying gig in Harvard Square in 1969 in a bar called the Casablanca. And basically, I've been playing and writing ever since. During the day, I would work at my day job in environmental studies, and at night, I'd sing in coffee houses and stuff. So, and both situations were always very important to me. So, been doing it a long time.
Okay, and we're going to close with a poem and a song. This one's called Pondicherry Winter. Pondicherry is a reserve up in Whitefield, New Hampshire, in the White Mountains that I did some writing for the Writing the Land project. The SK, of course, is Stanley Kunitz. So if you know his poetry, you might hear some references to that. Pondicherry Winter for SK. The frost is short-tempered, my dawn. Snow crunches beneath weary boots, and trees creak against the nip of breeze. Somewhere a report cracks the silence, a maple squeezed too hard by the cold. I trudge a quarter century behind from one of the tribes less taken with vortex, swaddled with comfort, drowsy in warmth, bounded by frozen windows, slow to grasp what lies beyond the glass also thrives, and is more and less than the sum of these parts. This early hour from the pond, under the thick ice, sonorous, mellifluous echoes undulate like a pod of polite whales waiting church breakfast. Above, vapor's curtains sweep across the glaze until they hang upon soft mounds of snow, muffling the shore of this rhymed garden, the realm of the ice spirit, who has passed through many names. He announces his own, and with a majestic wave and wing, silences the wind and brings the unveiling of miracle. Great flocks of heat rise as if translucent white starlings. They carve and curve into and out of each other, a thrum of transparent migration toward that pale, that distant sun.
Before I introduce the song, I want to tell you that this is sort of personally for me my perfect gig, in that being surrounded by beautiful paintings and listening to wonderful poetry and having people that actually listen to what I have to say and what Rodger has to say, it's just, it's very profound for me, and I want to thank you all. This tune, it's called Cold New Hampshire Morning in the Snow. Many years ago, I had another backup guitarist who's also a songwriter. Jai Josephs is his name. And he wrote the song called Cold New Hampshire Morning in the Snow. And I played it for years, and then I stopped playing it, and I forgot it totally. I forgot the lyrics, I forgot the melody. And out of the blue, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, he called me up, and I hadn't spoken to him for 50 years. He was living in Marin County in California. He called me up to say, "Hey, Lenny, it's me. And I just got married for the first time." He was 72 years old. He just got married. And he was vacationing or honeymooning in the White Mountains. So I said, hey, and he said, could I come by and visit? And I said, that would be great. And I said, by the way, do you remember that song that you wrote way back when called Cold New Hampshire Morning in the Snow? I totally forgot it. Do you remember it? And his initial reaction was, gee, it sort of rings a bell, but no. But when he was driving from the White Mountains to Richmond, which is where Susie and I live, it appeared in his brain, and he asked his new wife to turn on his phone so he could quickly sing it into the phone. And so he did. And he came back, and we played it together. And what I did with the song is I updated it a little because it was really written a long time ago, and I also added a bridge to the song. So I guess it's sort of co-written. Frost is on the treetops, the cats are all inside, there's embers glowing in that old wood stove. There's a bit of a chilly breeze outside, but here it's safe and warm, and it feels just like a million miles I drove. There's some reason why I'm standing here instead of spinning in the city's glow. But I just can't think of reasons when the air's so fine and clear as on this cold New Hampshire morning in the snow. The sun is pushing back the grayness from the eastern skies, rising through the pine trees on the hill. There's a lonesome crow a-calling from deep within the woods, and when he stops, the world is silent still. Must be some philosophy to tell me why I feel so free when I've still got so many miles to go. But somehow past and future just seem unreal to me on this cold New Hampshire morning in the snow. The road winds through the valley, about a half mile down the hill. There's an old Jeep pulling into sight. I walk back to the cabin, to the faces of my friends, where their smiling eyes reflect the fire's light. Been a long and full life, doing the best I could, wondering if I've learned all I was meant to know. but you don't need credentials to split a piece of wood on this cold New Hampshire morning in the snow. And I honestly never felt that I would feel so good as on this cold New Hampshire morning in the snow. Thank you. I want to thank the Cheshire County Historical Society. I want to thank Rodger Martin over here and Dave Bouchamp over here, and my wife Susie for entering that painting, because if she didn't enter painting it, I wouldn't have been here. So thank you, Susan Joyce Perry. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Lenny and Dave, too. And thank you all as well. It's been a great evening for us as well. So thank you.